Sherry Birkin, one of my favorite characters in Resident Evil, and possibly has the best character development of any character in Resident Evil. She made her first appearance in Resident Evil 2, and later made an appearance in Resident Evil 6. Welcome to Bird's Tales, the series where we take any character from any media, break down their life, and analyze their character. Today's subject is Sherry Birkin. Sherry was born sometime in 1986 to William and Annette Birkin. She lived in Raccoon suburbs. She spent very little time with her parents due to their work. Even after their transfer to the Umbrella Nest, a facility under Raccoon, this fact never changed. Despite how it looks, Sherry's parents did care about her, and they wanted her to be safe. Sometime in 1992, Sherry enrolled at East Raccoon Elementary. Little else is known about Sherry's life before Resident Evil 2, but in 1997, on Sherry's 11th birthday, her mother gave her a locket that would unknowingly make her a target for those seeking the G-Virus. On the 22nd of September 1998, William Birkin will be gunned down by Umbrella's Secret Service. They were there to take G-Virus samples. Upset that his life was going to come to an end before he was able to get his sweet revenge on Umbrella, Birkin infected himself with the G-Virus. Birkin G followed them to the Raccoon sewers, and before they were able to escape, Birkin G slaughtered them there. He would then consume the sample of the G-Virus, but the team also possessed a sample of the T-Virus. During the chaos, the casing for the T-Virus was destroyed. This would lead to an outbreak in Raccoon sewers that would eventually make its way to Raccoon's drinking water. Look, if Raccoon's drinking water is that connected to its sewers, Raccoon deserved it. On the 24th of September, more and more Raccoon citizens were infected and mutated into zombies. It would become harder and harder for Raccoon's police department and fire department to fight against the infection. During this time, Raccoon Police Department became a shelter for those who weren't yet infected. Sherry would receive a call from her mother telling her to go to Raccoon's police station for safety. However, the infection would slowly make its way to the police station. To stay safe, Sherry would hide around the police station, avoiding conflict. Okay, can we just pause for a second and admit that Sherry's survival skills is better than most adults in Resident Evil, than most adults in real life? Sherry was hiding around a police station for 2 goddamn days. This means she was finding scraps of food whenever she can, drinking water that wasn't infected with the T-Virus whenever possible, hiding from zombies and things that are much worse than zombies, like lickers, and her father who was after her. I imagine that when Claire found Sherry was dehydrated as shit. On the 29th of September 1998, Sherry was found by fellow survivor Claire Redfield, who was there trying to look for her brother. Hell of a day to try to look for your brother, Claire. Claire would inform another survivor, Leon Kennedy, that she found the little girl. I'm gonna say sometime before meeting Claire, Sherry encountered Birkin G. Why do I say this? Because in the original game, when meeting Claire, she warns Claire about the thing that is much worse than a zombie that's after her. So I'm gonna say Sherry encountered it and managed to escape. However, Birkin G was not the only creature after Sherry. Remember the locket that Sherry got for her 11th birthday? Well, that locket contained a sample of the G-Virus, and the BOW T-00 or Mr. X was sent by Umbrella to retrieve any samples of the G-Virus. After hearing Birkin G, Sherry would run, and Claire was unable to stop her. Sherry found shelter outside of the police station. There she heard her father calling out to her. Claire would then find Sherry a second time there, but Sherry would leave to search for her father. Sherry was not successful in finding her father. Sherry would make her way back to the police station. There she would hide in Police Chief Brian Irons' office. She would be found yet again by Claire there. Claire would travel under Chief Irons' office. Claire would then learn the truth about the G-Virus and Sherry. Claire would tell Leon that she know a way they can leave the city due to Raccoon sewers, and from there, Sherry and Claire will make their way through Raccoon sewers. Depending on the scenario, Birkin G would be successful in infecting Sherry with the G-Virus. They would then go to the nest, and Claire would be successful in creating a vaccine for Sherry. And to escape the destruction of the facility, they would board a train with Leon. However, in scenario B, Mr. X in his quest to retrieve the G-Virus sample would be the main focus of the story, and this would lead to his death at the Umbrella Nest. The two would still board a train to escape the destruction of the facility. It would soon be discovered that Birkin G5 attached himself to the train and was destroying the rear carts. By disconnecting the rear carts, Birkin was killed in the exploding facility. One of the things that I love so much about this game is Sherry and Claire's relationship. For me, it shows that even in the darkest times, human connection still endures. But I know this is not always the case, but the times where it is, it always makes for a beautiful story. This is technically the first video I've did this with, since this script was written before I added this part to the Birkins video. In the remake, as the city began to fall, Sherry would go to the Raccoon's police department for safety. This time Annette Birkin didn't tell her to go there. Just like in the original game, the infection would slowly make its way to the police department. The little survivor would avoid zombies and her father. On the 29th of September, Sherry would be found by Claire Redfield under the Raccoon's police station as she was escaping from Birkin G. After Claire defeats Birkin, Sherry would say something that is different from the original. She was told that her father was dead. In the original, she had no idea of her father's fate. They then made their way to the police station parking lot. There, Chief Irons would force Sherry to tie Claire's hands and he would take her with him to the orphanage. Now the question is, why did Chief Irons want Sherry? That's right, he wanted the locket that she was given on her 11th birthday. This time the locket didn't contain a sample of the G-Virus. Instead, it was a key to a secret sample of the G-Virus, hidden in the umbrella nest. At the orphanage, Sherry would attempt to escape, but Chief Irons was able to catch her. While holding her, Birkin G came to the safe by implanting one of his G embryos inside of Chief Irons. Sherry then hid under the orphanage and Claire would soon arrive there. Something else happens that's different from the original game. While escaping from the tyrant, they will enter an elevator. Birkin G was seriously injured the tyrant, and there, Sherry would realize that the monster that was chasing her was her own father. Birkin G would attack the elevator and they will find themselves in Raccoon Sewers. In the sewers, Sherry would encounter her mother. To keep her safe, Annette would lock Sherry in a garbage disposal area. I know Annette isn't the greatest mom, but she cares about Sherry's safety. It's unknown exactly when this happened, but Birkin G was successful in implanting one of his G embryos inside of Sherry. I would say it happened during the time when Sherry was traveling the sewers alone. This is the reason why Claire and Sherry would head to the umbrella nest. Thanks to Sherry's locket, Claire was able to retrieve a vaccine. Before Claire was able to make it back to Sherry, Birkin G would attack again. Claire would give Annette Birkin the vaccine, and Annette gave Sherry the vaccine and died soon after Sherry was cured. Now Claire and Sherry have even more in common. Two dead parents. They then boarded a train to escape the destruction of the facility with Leon Kennedy. Birkin G would attach itself to the rear carts. By disconnecting the rear carts, they were able to kill Birkin G. While walking away from Raccoon, the three promised to stay together. Fanboy time, I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil 2 Remake. I never really played the original game and I knew very little about it. But when I played this game, it was just, this was like my first game after not being able to play Resident Evil for 4 years, and this game made me realize why I love Resident Evil so much. And Sherry and Claire's relationship was one of the reasons I loved this game so much. Alright, fanboy is leaving the building. After the events of Resident Evil 2, the three promised to stay together. They bought a house and Sherry began to go back to school. The three ended up living happily ever after. Or that's what I would say if this was some kind of fairy tale, but it's not. The three would stay together for a while, but Leon will remind Claire that she has another game to get to. And Claire was like, oh shit, I do, and she continued to look for her brother. Sometime after, Leon and Sherry were found by the US government. To ensure Sherry's safety, Leon joined the Anti-Umbrella Pursuit and Investigation team, but the US government was determined that Sherry wouldn't have that happy ending we all wanted her to. So Sherry was taken into custody and was put under observation because of the G-Virus still left in her blood. During her time there, Sherry can only hope that Claire didn't forget about her. But Claire didn't. Claire returned to Sherry's side and stayed with her as she had to suffer through many tests and experiments. Eric C. Simmons, the National Security Advisor and one of the antagonists of Resident Evil 6, was made Sherry's legal guardian. Derek C. Simmons planned to use Sherry's blood for his own private research. But there was one good thing about Derek C. Simmons. He wasn't a complete asshole. He did allow Claire to visit Sherry as much as she wanted to. During this time, Sherry's existence was kept a secret to keep her safe from Albert Wesker, who they believed would use her blood to create another G-Virus, much like he did with that dude in Code Veronica. But during the time Wesker was working for Umbrella's rival company, Ada was able to retrieve tissue fragments from Birkin G's remains. But I am going to say the US government didn't know of this. However, I do have a problem for how long they kept Sherry under custody. Sherry was kept under custody for 11 years. She was only released in 2009 after Wesker's death. But the problem with it is that Wesker was reported to have died with Jill Valentine in 2007. So they should have released her then, not knowing that Wesker is still alive. Sherry's safety wasn't the only reason she was kept under custody. The US government wanted to study the G virus remaining inside of her blood. I really can't stand the US government in Resident Evil and how basically they took Sherry's entire life. They branded it as, oh, we're trying to keep her safe from Albert Wesker, like he needed her to get the G virus. If that was the case, Wesker would have already had the G virus because the G virus was on the black market. But the only reason Sherry was in custody was they were using her for their own BOW project. That's the reason why Simmons was her legal guardian. Simmons wasn't the only asshole. Everyone involved in Sherry's case were assholes. During this time, Derek C. Simmons' subordinate Carla Rittermines succeeded in completing the C virus, which was made using Sherry's blood. In 2009, as I mentioned, after Wesker's death, Sherry was given a chance to be free from protective custody if she were to join the US government in their fight against bioterrorism. Sherry knew what BOWs were capable of, and she couldn't bear the thought of people going through the same thing she did as a child, so she rapidly agreed. Even though Sherry is happy to help with the fight against bioterrorists, I just hate the fact that Sherry really didn't have a choice in the matter. Cause if she did, I feel that Sherry would have joined Claire in TerraSave. In 2011, Sherry would join the newly founded DSO. After joining the DSO, Sherry was placed under the direct supervision of Derek C. Simmons. In December 2012, Sherry was sent to Adonia to locate Jake Mueller, the son of Albert Wesker. Jake's body was immune to the C virus, and the US government believed that they could use his blood to create a vaccine. So, Sherry was tasked to go to Adonia and bring him to the US. During this time, Adonia was in a civil war, and Jake Mueller was a mercenary who fought on the side of the Adonian Liberation Army, the people responsible for spreading the C virus throughout Adonia. And because of the usage of BOWs, the BSAA were sent to Adonia. Sherry was able to locate Jake Mueller, and on their way to City Hall, they encounters Chris Redfield and the BSAA. This is Sherry's first time ever meeting Chris. Jake, still wearing the Adonian Liberation Army symbol, was noticed by Pierce. Pierce informs Chris that Jake is one of their targets, but Sherry tells Chris and his team that Jake isn't a threat to them. They were then interrupted by a new BOW being placed on the battlefield. After defeating the new BOW, Sherry and Jake were picked up by a BSAA helicopter that would take them outside of the city. While passing through the mountains, the helicopter was attacked by Neo Umbrella, the group responsible for gifting the Adonian Liberation Army the C virus. The helicopter crashed, and we are able to see the effect of the G virus on Sherry. They are then captured by Ustanak, Jake's crazy ex, and Dr. Carla Rittermines, the one responsible for creating the C virus. They were taken to China and were experimented on for 6 months. The two were able to escape the facility and were put right in the middle of the events happening in China. Sherry was then able to regain contact with her supervisor, Derek C. Simmons. Sherry was ordered to rendezvous with Simmons at the Kulong building. On their way there, the two would run into Leon and Helena Harper. Leon then informs Sherry that Simmons was responsible for the recent bioterror attacks. Sherry would tell Leon where to find Simmons, and they would meet again at the Kulong building. At the building, Sherry demands the truth from Simmons, and oh my god, do I really have to finish this? Yes, you do. It is soon revealed that the president was killed in one of the bioterrorist attacks orchestrated by Simmons. Simmons' guards then opened fire. Sherry and Jake tried to escape, but were captured again by the same people. They found themselves in an underground facility. When trying to escape, they encountered Chris and Pierce. Sherry and Jake continues to leave the facility, and on their way leaving the facility, Jake's ex makes his last appearance. This time, they were finally able to kill it. They returned to the US, and a vaccine was made using Jake's blood. One of the things that I like so much about this game that I never played is Sherry's and Jake's relationship, and how different it is from their fathers. While their fathers created BOWs, Sherry and Jake fought against them. While their fathers only cared about their own interests, Sherry and Jake fought for others. For me, Sherry is one of the best characters in Resident Evil, and her development throughout the games is truly amazing. In Resident Evil 2, Sherry is kind and trusting, even though her parents told her not to trust strangers, but she chooses to trust Claire, a complete stranger, and truly believed that Claire would keep her safe, and Claire did. Claire risked everything to keep Sherry safe, and this would cause Sherry to idolize Claire. Sherry wanted to be just like her. Also in Resident Evil 2, you can see that Sherry is a very courageous person. In the original game, it is shown when Sherry goes to look for her father, despite the dangers and the fears. And in the remake, it is shown when Sherry is at the orphanage. She could have stayed there and waited for Claire to come, but Sherry decides to escape, despite the dangers and the fears. Also in RE2, you can see that Sherry is a very lonely child. This was the reason she chose to trust Claire. Her loneliness was the result of her neglecting parents. Sherry received little to no attention from her parents. I know I said it 1,000 times in this video and in my Birkin video that her parents actually did care about her, but Sherry was always second on their priority list. Sherry's loneliness wasn't the only result of her neglecting parents. In RE2, you can see that Sherry was a very shy and quiet person. But throughout the game, that slowly changes, and by the end, Sherry is not only completely open with Claire, she also opens up to Leon, someone she has never met. In Resident Evil 6, Sherry turns into that person she idolized. She is strong, yet kind, and she is willing to risk her own life to ensure the safety of others. It's just sad to see that Sherry is still somewhat lonely. For me, Sherry is a great example for how childhood trauma can shape a person but not define them. As a child, Sherry went through something that would honestly break any normal person. But Sherry kept moving, and she was able to grow into someone that her child self will be extremely proud of. 2 months later, Tess here. I want to add something that I left out. I know I mentioned 1,000 times that I really don't mind Sherry's portrayal in Resident Evil 6. But now that I know just a little more about Resident Evil 6, I do feel that Sherry was underutilized in that game. Sherry has one of the most compelling backstories out of any character in Resident Evil, and we get to see most of it played out in Resident Evil 2. But it's not really touched on in RE6, not what we see in RE2, nor her life in custody. Aside from a few lines here and there, they don't really focus on these important parts of her life. A scene that could have been the most emotional scene in RE6 was Leon and Sherry's reunion. Not only is this scene extremely important for Sherry, it's also important for Leon. I feel like one of Leon's biggest regrets is that he wasn't able to help Sherry after the events of Raccoon. Leon not only promised Claire that he was going to keep Sherry safe, he also promised to himself. Sherry made Leon want to live again. And he says, and it filed in Resident Evil 6. To tell you the truth, I thought about ending it several times actually, with just a quick bullet to the head. But I didn't give up. Sherry needed me. She was a 10-year-old girl thrown in a hellish environment with monsters after her. So I pulled myself together for her sake. She was our reason for not giving up, especially for Claire. And the funny thing is this is said in a file in Resident Evil 6. So the fact that their reunion doesn't have that emotional weight behind it, their reunion could have been the perfect scene to show some amazing growth in Sherry. It also could have been the scene where Leon gets some kind of closure. But it's too short, and the scene is almost meaningless. That's not the only reason why Sherry's portrayal in RE6 isn't perfect. In RE6, Sherry feels like a secondary character. Jake is the main character, and Sherry is just the supporting character. She's only there for Jake. I don't mind Jake as a character. In fact, I actually think he's a very interesting character. And I also think that he is very underutilized in that game. But Sherry should have had more of an important role in that game. And the fact that this is the last game Sherry appears in makes her entire story unresolved. 2 months later, Tess here again. Anyway, I want to say a few things. The only reason this video didn't release when I mentioned it all the way back when I made my Birkin video 2 months ago was I just didn't feel right releasing it then, even though this video was already recorded and halfway edited. Anyway, I'm gonna pass the mic back to past Tess. One of the things that pisses me off about Resident Evil is the fact that Sherry and Claire never share a scene together after Resident Evil 2. And it kinda looks like Claire just completely forgets about Sherry, but she doesn't. Claire tries to spend as much time with Sherry as she could, and it also kinda really sucks that Sherry wasn't able to join Claire at Terra Save. Anyway, if you made it this far into the video, you can give the video a like. If you like the content, you can subscribe to the channel. Nobody is forcing you. Also, you can always comment what character you want me to do next. One last thing, please Capcom, bring Sherry back on another game. I'm on my knees begging you. You still here?